Hello and welcome to this Star Wars Squadrons tutorial video. Today we will be discussing the bomber classification, specifically the shipbreaker class setup. The first thing to discuss when talking about the bombers are their movement. The best way to describe their movement is fat. Bombers are much slower and less maneuverable than the other ships in the game, almost forcing them into the shipbreaker class setup. It is not impossible to be a successful dogfighter in a bomber. However, with your heavy armaments and girthy health, you are much better suited for capital ships destruction. Because of this, bombers' targeting order is the capital ship first, followed by support ships second, cruisers or raider class ships third, player bombers fourth, players fifth, and the AI ships as last. The next thing to talk about is your survivability. As a shipbreaker, your survival is non-essential. This is not an excuse to throw your life away, however. If you can escape with your life intact, do it, but more often than not, you will end up dying. This is not a bad thing, since death brings you the tactical map where you can assist in directing your forces and planning a better attack for your next life. For the Rebel Y-Wing, I will normally max out my shields in my outfitting since they will return after a brief period of time. The Empire bombers lack shielding, but have the largest hull in the game, topping at around 4,000 units. The Empire also has the ability to shift power into its cannons, allowing pilots to never run out of ammunition at the cost of their fuel for their engines. The Empire's thick hull also costs them critical survivability, as they will have to return to a hangar or their support ships for any kind of meaningful repair, where the Y-Wing can break the line of sight and quickly jump right back into the fight. A player support ship, resupply, or extra shielding can also help extend your attack's run. However, your team should always prioritize the fighters over you. No amount of resupplies can save you from a hungry interceptor. Now we will start with defense. I know you just want to go to the attack, and a siegebreaker is not the best ship for defense by far. However, knocking down the assaulting raider vessel before it can hammer your fleet is critical to your team's survival. The slow nature of the bomber will also keep you close to the fleet, where you can respond to enemy bombers and breakers much faster than your team. Utilize the marking ability to tag enemy bombers and bring your team's fighters down upon them. With the bomber, you have more room to think and must plan out every move in advance. After the raider is down, you should use your judgment on the enemy team as well as the positioning of the enemy's raider to pick which area they will attack next. Sit next to that area, selecting enemy players until you find a bomber or one enemy player is close enough to shoot. Try not to leave your fleet alone, as a good bomber can knock out your subsystems in a single attacking pass. Marking bombers and intercepting missiles is an easy way to stall their attack and allow your fighters to turn the tide back into your favor. For attacking general, the shipbreaker is a very aggressive build for the bombers, packed with as much damage as it can muster in its 10 seconds of life in enemy fire. When attacking support vessels and raiders, the main priority is the turrets. A Goliath missile after the shields pop can quickly clean out the whole of any pesky turrets. Every one removed is extra time for you and less risk to your life and for the lives of your team. However, with the capital ship, turrets take a back seat for you. I will explain this later. Attacking the support ships. When on the attack, you want to wait a few seconds before picking your target. If you rush in like a typical fighter, you will be spanked back to the hangar before you can land any meaningful damage. Watch your team and the enemy's team. Pick the ship the enemies are currently not at. This is more often than not the one your raider is currently not on. While the raider will soak up much more turret fire and let you dish out more damage for longer, it also attracts enemy pilots and is an easy death for you. You should target enemy pilots to see where they are and what they are. If your target has an interceptor sitting on it not moving, he's looking currently at you. Staying with your team might be a good idea in this phase, but it relies entirely on the enemy team. It is not important to sink one support ship every time you attack. It often takes 2 or 3 attack cycles to break them. Weakening the support ships to later snuff them out together is a perfect way to maximize your attack timer. Speaking of the morale system, the attack and defense cycles are based around the bar at the top of the screen. Every downed ship is worth positive morale, and every death crushes your morale. On average, you must kill 2 players to make up for 1 death while you are on the attack. This cost grows steeper the longer you remain attacking. The Raider is worth about 75% of the morale bar, and taking it down early with 2 eager bombers who rushed in can flip the tide before any shots are even fired. This helps reiterate the point of staying alive. If you can escape, do so. Attacking the carrier ship is daunting and risky. At this stage, you do not have to worry about coming home. You won't. You first, as always, let your team and Raider approach first. Your first target will be the targeting system. Destroying this will lower the attack speed and accuracy of all the turrets aboard, dramatically. They will still be considered a threat, but it will force the enemy team to do most of the hard work. Next, you should target their shield generators, finishing on the power distributor. The Rebel capital ships' shield generators are located perfectly, so once one is destroyed, you can easily drop down a few meters and take out the power distributor with you. This move can win the game in a single attack phase. Approaching the capital ship is a task in and of itself. Locking onto your target will let you see how far you have left to boost. Charge your engines while you move into a perfectly straight shot to the systems, keeping in mind that the ship's turrets and enemy pilots in the area. Knowing how far your boost carries you is essential to this role, as stopping early will limit your effectiveness and stopping too late can outright kill you with 0 damage done to the enemy capital. The goal of charging is to slip underneath their shields. You will be less than 5 meters away from your target, but you will be able to damage it directly. If your team is loaded for ship breaking, targeting the shield generators first may be better. However, your team's interceptors will be next to worthless until the turrets or targeting systems are dealt with. Normally, by the time you destroy the last generator, the enemy capital ship is weak enough to just spray the hull down and call it a match. This is not always the case, so always try to eliminate every subsystem in every game. Once the shields are down, you do not have to get close to the ship in order to engage, and in fact, launching a Goliath missile against their turrets will help clear the skies for yourself, fighters, and the Raider. May he rest in peace. Keep in mind though, most siege-worthy weapons light you up like a Christmas tree, highlighting you for the enemy pilots to feast on. If you have done everything right, you will get at least 1 subsystem per life. If you are lucky, you may be able to take out 2, but don't get greedy. Remember, every death costs more and more from your attack phase, but never leave your first target alive. Chances are you will not make it back anyway. The Shipbreaker loadout does have some variety in its composition, depending on your particular playstyle and team composition. I recommend having 2 different loadouts that you can jump between should one become blocked or useless by the enemy team. Seeker mines are a very nice surprise for any pilot seeing you as an easy meal. My personal favorite is the Berserker loadout, demanding 60 to 100,000 capital ship damage per match. The armaments are the same across the factions, with a rotary cannon primary, the Goliath missile and beam cannon as secondaries, finishing with the unstable drive. The rotary cannon is a terrifying weapon for both pilots and fleet ships alike, affording nearly limitless fire and very forgiving to inaccurate players. It is important to note you should never use the auto-targeting weapons as their damage is cut in half. The beam cannon can be fired in conjunction with the rotary cannon, leading to subsystem destruction before any pilot ship can turn around to respond to the ping. The Goliath missile, once shields fall, easily destroys dozens of turrets in a single launch. It does little damage compared to other heavy armaments, but with 200-meter kill zone, lands it as a staple in my build. Countering the Goliath missile will also detonate it early, making the Goliath missile a reliable threat to pilots as well. For the Rebel Y-Wing, the Berserker class uses a deflector hull and ray shielding to maximize your staying power. However, this also leaves you very vulnerable to missile attacks, especially the barrage rockets. For the Imperial bomber, the hull should be reinforced. For both Imperial and Rebel, the countermeasures should be Seeker warheads. While it is tempting to use the proton torpedo due to its mighty payload, it is important to remember that it flies slower than you can and will be shot down for 0 damage, and cannot be fired while inside of 500 meters. These factors limit its usefulness to only a few very select situations where the beam cannon easily fills in with comparable damage at a much higher risk to you. The unstable engines is an odd choice considering its drawbacks. However, the explosion created on death can squeak out just enough damage to finish off your target or destroy a few turrets in the process. This damage and range is well worth the reduction in health if you need that little extra bite. This is not an exclusive role to bombers, they just happen to be doing it best. I have created a build exclusive to the X-Wing I affectionately named the Fleet Hunter, able to fill both a fighter and bomber role to the tune of 65,000 capital ship damage with a 3 KD ratio. If you want to see that build or my build for support ships known as the Spider, like and comment below.